This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Franny's Pharmacy.
Now more than ever, it's important that our society focuses more on our mental and physical health. At Franny's Pharmacy, the team is committed to their community's need of being happy, healthy, and stress-free. Come learn how Franny's Pharmacy can assist you in a clean, professional environment with their expert bud tenders that are excited to educate you about the benefits of their lab-tested, DEA-certified CBD products. Franny's Pharmacy also offers wholesale and franchise opportunities. Visit their website at frannysPharmacy.com, and that's pharmacy with an F, and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Again, that's Franny's Pharmacy with an F.com and use the promo code CannaConnect10 for an exclusive Cannabinoid Connect discount. Franny's Pharmacy, putting the farm back into pharmacy.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Endodna Health.
Hey cannabis consumers, have you ever consumed a cannabis product thinking it'll make you feel a certain way, but then it doesn't? Don't you wish you had a clear understanding of your own DNA so that you could make informed decisions about what type of cannabis products interact best with your system? Well, now you can with Endodna. Endodna is a simple DNA test that maps your entire endocannabinoid system and then matches that summary with a specific cannabinoid ratio and terpene profile that best aligns with your unique genotype. Imagine being armed with personal information when visiting a dispensary. You'll have the knowledge and power and capability to purchase products that best align with your genotype. Visit their website to purchase the EndoDNA Collection Kit and Endo Decoded Report at endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. Again, that's endodna.com/products and use the promo code CONNECT15 for a 20% discount. The future of cannabinoid therapeutics is here with Endodna. Morgan Davis, welcome back.
Thanks, Kevin. How are you? It's nice to see you.
I'm doing well. It's nice to see you as well. I was just thinking before we started recording here, I think it's been about 3 months since you last came on, and the focus of that discussion was primarily about, Delta 8, among other things. So we're on a new topic today, which is safe banking.
Yeah. So let's see, our Delta 8 conversation, has it gone? Has the last 3 months gone the way you thought it would for Delta 8?
It has. Yeah. I mean, particularly here in Texas, there hasn't been much movement just because, like, within the court process, I think it's kind of paused, or they haven't made their final determination. So, operators, retailers are still selling Delta 8 here in Texas, and it's still super popular. Is that what kind of you're seeing? I forget what our ultimate or our predictions were for that episode, but what have you seen?
Yeah, Delta 8's continued to take off. Even with the uncertainty, it continues to grow in popularity. There are some rumors flying around that with the new farm bill coming down the line in the next 12 months, that it will try and do away with synthetic cannabinoids like Delta 8 or Delta 10 or any of the others that we've seen come online.
The new farm bill, I didn't even hear that was coming out. So that's like what, like an amended version of the 2018 farm bill, or?
Well, we get one every certain number of years. And so the last one, the 2018 one, the one that, created all the things that we talk about all the time and the industries we're both in now. There's a new, the next sort of slated farm bill should be coming out in the next 12 months. And a lot of people are saying that one of the things it will do, and that certain lobbyists and certain industries are pushing for, is to go ahead and get rid of it on the federal level and clear up this sort of issue among the states, which I'll be interesting to see if that is actually what happens. It's not been the position of all federal agencies to agree that Delta 8 is a problem. And as we've seen, not all courts agree. So it'd be an interesting 12 months, but I don't think its popularity is stopping anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. And it's just sounds like another band-aid type approach to the larger issue. You know, I mentioned before we started recording that I had I was a sponsor at the Delta 8, Delta 9 and psychedelic medicine conference in Dallas, Texas in March, and at the end of March, early April. And
Hmm.
Delta 8 was everywhere. And that was the talk of most, speaking engagements and presentations. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking and I'm saying, this Delta 8 and HHC and all this synthesized cannabinoids are a result of prohibition, because it just further shows the appetite for the consumers wanting the psychoactive properties that natural delta
Right.
9 THC provides, right? And so if we were thinking about getting this stuff off the street and making things more safe or whatever, right? Like, just legalize and regulate.
Seems like there's an easier pathway, right?
It seems like it, right? But there's just, of course, this reluctance to do so. And I guess this is a good segue, because the Safe Banking Act was recently attached to the Competes Act.
Hmm.
And I know that, you and of course others of the industry have a really good handle on the history of the Safe Banking Act. So tell us a little bit about how many times this, or first off, like what the bill is, how many times this bill has been attached to various legislation, and where it's at today.
Yeah, so the Safe Banking Act, to put it real simply, provides a safe what I would call a safe harbor for financial institutions, and says that even though cannabis is federally illegal, licensed, legally licensed operators operating inside legal regulatory frameworks on a state by state basis, if the Safe Banking Act were to pass, financial institutions could do business with them without being in fear of trafficking in illicit funds. Because that's the real fear here, right? So if cannabis is federally illegal, then by definition, all of the money that comes out of those companies, out of those businesses on the federal level is illegal money. And so banks have a lot of regulations and a lot of rules around the fact that they're not allowed to take money from businesses that they know are operating illegally. And so and doing so can get them in a lot of trouble with their regulating agencies, and they can lose their backing from the government and their insurance and all sorts of other things that nobody wants to happen, because for lots and lots of reasons.
Too
And
risky, right? Too risk. The risk is
exactly,
too high. Yeah.
risk is too high. And so um, this basically would say to banks, okay, if they can show you that they are licensed and they're operating in a state where it's legal and they're passing whatever other compliance you want to throw at them, you can do business with them without fearing that, the FBI is going to come in and start seizing money, or that you're going to lose your insurance, or you're going to lose your certification from the government. You don't have to worry about any of that. And so that's essentially the goal of the Safe Banking Act, is to give cannabis businesses, well, it's really to give the banking industry the cover they need to do business with the cannabis industry. It
which is
has
which is
gone
which is super important. And I think you would
super
agree,
important.
to, like, not only of course all operators, but especially like the small to medium sized businesses who literally like cannot operate with banks right now. I mean, the larger MSOs, I
Yeah.
think there's some wiggle room there, right? But yeah, I want to point that out.
There are some regional banks. There are small local banks that are making exceptions. There are larger MSOs that are finding ways around it. But for anybody who's getting into this business, I mean, imagine it. Any entrepreneur who starts their own business, right? Single operator LLC. First thing you do once you get your operating agreement and your EIN and you form your business is you go over to the bank and you open a bank account, right? In the name of your business. And that's where you put your money. Well, they can't do any of that. And so they are holding on to huge amounts of cash. And it's a major security risk. It's become, and when we say a major security risk, An article came out recently talking about this year alone already, there have been, I think, more than 50 armed robberies in the state of Washington of cannabis businesses, some of which have resulted in people dying, being shot and killed.
That's one state. I'm so glad that you had a stat on that, because I was curious to see what the crime rate has been, the robberies, the deaths, because I'll tell you, every other day I'm on my Twitter feed, and within the cannabis community, they're sharing a new video
Mm-hmm.
footage of a dispensary being
Mm-hmm.
robbed, or someone being shot and killed, or a couple of people. I mean, it's insane at this point. It's crazy.
Right. And what other business can say that? What other business can say that because that they're completely licensed, that they're a completely legal business, they pay taxes, they're doing everything else that any other business owner has to do and would do, but because of this one issue, they're now at a much higher risk of being robbed and violently murdered.
Right.
That's I don't know that there's any other business that can say that. I'd be very interested to know if there was,
No, I don't know
but
one.
um, so it's a very important bill, and in addition to the immediate need of security and protection, there's also just the need of it helps investors, accredited investors get in to the business. It helps um, cannabis cannabis operators buy real estate and operate with brokers. It just opens up a many more legitimate pathways for these businesses to grow and to be financially stable.
Right. Yeah, you
um
mentioned the accredited investors. I mean, also institutional money, right? I mean,
correct.
the
Correct.
big yeah, the big institutions coming in and investing. And so there is so many different I guess avenues that this opens up, right? So what has the current track record of safe banking been at this point? And I think I read where you put it really, really perfectly. I don't want to steal your thunder, but you use this analogy that of like a chew toy that a dog would use. So I'll
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the Safe Banking Act has gone through the House. It's passed in the House 6 times, right? So it passes in the House and it gets tossed up to the Senate, and lots of noise is made in the media. Lots of noise is made, by all the representatives who are sponsoring it. And
Lots
then
of
it
Schumer
promptly,
Schumer tweets. Lots of Schumer
right,
tweets.
exactly. And then it promptly dies. Um, and my analogy that I made a little bit off the cuff was, it's like the chew toy of the cannabis world. My dogs, they have like a bin of toys, right? And they always love these super squeaky ones. And so my puppy will go and she'll pull one out and she'll squeak it and squeak it and squeak it, and she'll bring it over to me and she'll squeak it and squeak it and squeak it. And then I'll grab it from her and put it away because it's driving me insane that she keeps squeaking it, right?
Right.
And eventually she'll go back to the basket, she'll grab it again, and she'll squeak it and squeak it and squeak it. And we'll do this whole circus, forever. Um, and that's kind of what the Safe Banking Act has become. It's become this thing that everybody gets really excited about, as they should. As we've talked about, it's a good bill. Like it's got a good, it's got 180 sponsors this time around, I think. The point of it is very important, but it gets brought up. It passes with a lot of thunder and a lot of excitement, and everybody's talking about it and everybody's printing about it. And we get to the Senate and it dies, and everybody kind of goes silent. And it doesn't come up again until it hits the floor again.
Right.
Um, and so that's why I call it the chew toy of the cannabis world. And it's really unfortunate that that's sort of where our politics are these days. And I have some interesting theories about what the next 12 months is potentially going to bring for it.
I definitely want to hear those theories. Before you get to those, though, I think it's a really great analogy that you've described there. And I can see the cannabis industry and advocates and even investors seeing safe baking as a huge catalyst, right? To kind
Mm-hmm.
of be that next stepping stone on the path to federal legalization. My question to you is it the only one? I mean, is there anything else that the industry can lean on besides safe banking, or is this the one we need to lead with because it already has so much attention and exposure?
So I think that safe banking is the most important. Let me put it that way. I, in fact, believe it's more important than legalization at this point because of the desperate need, because that the ability to operate in a legal market and be financially and physically secure will help this industry grow exponentially even without legalization, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are other potential things to focus on, and I don't know that the MORE Act is what I would focus on. I think we're going to get into a pissing contest between the House and the Senate with opposing legalization bills that are, because the Senate says they're introducing one before the end of the session this summer. And I fear that's going to just turn into a big pissing contest between the two of them.
In terms of like progressive Democrats versus moderate Democrats and just kind of fighting for what more turf they can win within the bill. Is that why you say that?
Well, no, the Senate with Republican sponsors is going to present their own bill before the end of the session.
Oh.
And so and
So
nobody knows what's in
there's
it
gonna
yet.
be gridlock, you're saying, because it's gonna be basically the same old age story, Republican versus Democrat, my bill's better than yours, and getting nowhere.
That's my fear.
Yeah.
That's my fear. And my conspiracy theory that I mentioned to you earlier is that it was originally announced that the Senate was going to do that, and they were going to do it by the end of this month, or maybe by the end of the next month. Anyway, it was going to be very soon. We were going to get that bill. Now they're saying they're not going to introduce it until the end of the summer, which will be very close to the end of the session. So for me, being a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to Washington, I have questions. Is this the Senate's way of once again sort of stalling legalization and further complicating the conversation? Is this the Senate's way of destroying the MORE Act for political reasons that have nothing to do with the cannabis industry? Is this their way of creating that gridlock intentionally so? And if that's the case, if any of those theories is right, then there's why would they even focus on the Safe Banking Act when they've got this massive piece of legislation that's about to come out? And I could see them arguing, well, we don't need to address that. We're going to address that in the bill that we're introducing. And why don't we just do it all at once instead of piecemeal? And the reason you don't do it all at once is because it never gets done all at once.
And it's
right?
impossible. It's impossible. I mean, this industry, this topic is so complex. There's so many topics that fall under cannabis, right? Like social justice, social equity, banking, regulation, science, health, medicinal claims, I mean, the list goes on and on. So yeah, you have to tackle it one at a time. I totally agree with you. And I think those theories are sound. I think there might be even a fourth, and that is, we understand how slow moving the government is and how reactionary the government is also, right? Especially both parties when it comes close to midterms or, election time.
Sure.
So my view is that even the fourth possibility is that both of these parties are like waking up and their eyes, like as midterms are approaching, and they're being like, okay, well, what are some topics that we can get behind that has like, majority American support here? And cannabis is obviously one of those. So it's almost like maybe both parties are just like scrapping and scrounging at this point to try to put something together, in preparation of the midterms coming, which will eventually and undoubtedly cause gridlock, right? I mean,
Right.
that will happen. One thing I'm curious about, though, and I want your take on, is like, I don't understand why there hasn't been more traction with the States Reform Act. Like, if the Republicans wanted to introduce a bill, there's already one. Why not endorse it and just move forward with that one?
Well, I mean, believe it or not, the Republican Party doesn't call and talk to me and tell me all their theories. But
Are you serious? They don't? That's crazy.
um, the thing that I hear consistently from people who are, working in lobbying and advocacy in the space is that the unfortunate truth is it really has nothing to do with cannabis. It has to do with the fact that the Republican Party historically does not approve of or stand on the side of massive regulation. They are all about allowing states to regulate themselves, allowing, and they are not interested in massive federal legislation.
Right.
And the Democratic Party firmly stands on the other side of that.
Right.
And so I think the issue that continually comes up in all of these bills is not only who should be regulating it, but how much should it be regulated by that party? And there doesn't seem to be any consensus. Everybody agrees that cannabis should be legal. Everybody agrees that we're moving in that direction, but nobody can agree about what the next step is and who's going to be in charge of that. And that's, I think that's why you're seeing them not really come out and support almost anything.
Right.
Because there does not seem to be any consensus among the Republican Party as to who's supposed to be responsible for this.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
In a way that keeps everybody safe.
Right. And again, going back to like the fact that it's such a complex issue. I mean, if there isn't even an appetite to kind of roll up your sleeves and figure it out, it's just going to stay stalled, right? And it's just going to become that chew toy, like you talked about earlier.
Well, and are they waiting for so many states, and we're getting close, to legalize it in some form that it becomes that it's essentially all they have to do is rubber stamp it?
Right. Like biding their time. I used to think that before.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's a possibility. I mean, there's 18 states currently that are adult use. So they're almost halfway there. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and by last count, it's 38 with medical.
You're right. Yep. Interesting. So what's your view on safe baking as a standalone bill?
My concern with it being a standalone bill is, so the sponsor, the main, the original sponsor, the main advocate he is retiring this year. He's no longer going to be around.
Perlmutter, right?
Perlmutter, that's right. And so I'm going to be interested to see who's going to take it up, who's going to take up the standard and start pushing it forward. I think when you have the loudest voice in the room leaving for that kind of bill, it doesn't bode well.
Right.
But as a standalone bill, it's a logical bill. It makes sense, and it doesn't require massive regulation, right? All it does is allow banks to do what they're already doing and allow businesses to operate the way that they've been licensed to operate. So I don't see why there would continue to be such a pushback, other than all the reasons that we've already discussed this evening. As a standalone bill, I think it's worth a shot. And I'm sure there are lots of people in Washington, D.C. who tell me that I'm an idiot for saying that, or that I don't understand how things work. But the way we've been doing it doesn't work. So my thought is, why not try something different?
Right. Well, anybody who calls you an idiot is an idiot, because I don't think that they've ever talked to you. Because obviously you're very articulate and you're educated and you know your field very well. So that is the wrong choice of word if they were trying to insult you. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes.
I very much appreciate that. It's very kind. I think they should give it a shot at sending it up on its own. And um, you know, there's a little bit of a difference this time around that I've noticed in the last couple of weeks and what I've been reading. You are seeing more states put their own money and their own lobbying behind it this time. You are seeing more advocacy groups. You are seeing the conversation turn to the immediate need in terms of security and the violence that is taking place in the cannabis industry. Um, and I will be interested to see if that makes a difference this time around.
Yeah, that's
it should. It should.
It absolutely should. Yeah, no, you nailed it. And that's a good way of putting it, because I've been thinking the same. Like, there's, if I could put it in like an analogy, there's this like massive tidal wave of like new research, new findings, new states going online, new tax revenue being generated, like all these success stories around cannabis that it's almost impossible to ignore this point from a federal standpoint, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen New Mexico go online in their first week, they made over $10 million. And
Right.
I'm from New Mexico, and there's what I think there's maybe 2 million people in the state total. So we know that it's people from Texas and other states that are coming in, right? And so like Texas is going to eventually turn their head and go, well, what's going on over there? You know, hopefully if they wake up. But it's, and then with the study that the Hill just came out with about how cannabis adult use states, there is concrete data that's now showing that prescription medication is decreasing because of cannabis use. So I mean, I don't know what more, data or information we need at this point, but
Oh man, I mean, it's overwhelming. And that's the question I'm constantly asking myself is what more do you need? I mean, and not just when it comes to, Congress, but when it comes to the FDA, when it
right.
comes to lots of agencies that we deal with in this space, what more do you need? And what I don't think anybody's made really clear yet, and I haven't heard the argument made well, I'm sure somebody's made it, is I believe that the Safe Banking Act, giving cannabis businesses, licensed cannabis businesses, access to banking is the surest way to kill the illegal market.
For sure.
I mean, because at that point, what is the benefit to not being a licensed operator?
Right. Besides living in California where the taxation is so high, but in other states where it's not.
Yeah. Correct. I mean, there's that.
But that's the only outlier example that I can think of. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I see what you're saying, right? And it would even give new entrant consumers more confidence because, if they're in a state where it hasn't been legal and they've just been used to, say, maybe buying on the black market, they can have more confidence walking into a dispensary now, not, having to deal those with, I don't know, people they don't know or trust necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, come on, you walk into a dispensary and you've got to go behind a door. You got to get buzzed behind a door after you share your license into a tiny window. And then you got to pull cash out of an ATM standing right next to the register and hand it to the guy. It feels, it's not a consumer experience for the faint of heart. Right. And it's not, it's by no means consumer friendly. And nonetheless, these businesses are booming and they're making a lot of money and helping a lot of people. So imagine if you could walk in and Apple Pay and do all the other things that you're used to doing in every other situation where you want to purchase a consumer good.
Right. As an adult.
Correct.
So we're going to have, we've talked about this before. We're going to have you on, ever so often as a reoccurring guest to kind of keep us abreast of all these different issues and legislation that's being proposed or, trying to pass. So my question to you as we wrap up, Morgan, is say, in the next 3 months, we jump on to have another conversation. What do you think we're going to be talking about? Where will we be?
Oh man, we're going to be talking about whatever this legislation is that the Senate is passing down. I'm very both nervous, excited, anticipating what it's going to look like, what it's going to propose. I think we're going to be talking about the growing divide inside the hemp and CBD space between Delta 8 and CBD and other non-synthetic cannabinoids. And I think we're going to be talking about probably whatever the next wave of innovation is. I think it's going to be food and beverage this year, especially beverage. I'm seeing a lot. I think we're all seeing a lot more big players start to take the risk and get behind THC infused beverages. And so I'm excited to see that part of the industry take off.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think those are definitely some things that we'll be touching on, and among others, because as you and I both know, I mean, every day is different in this industry and things change on a dime. So all we can do is
exciting. It's always
right?
exciting.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Absolutely. Well, hey, Morgan, before we go, I want to give you the floor. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
I would say, and this has become my habit recently of, as an attorney, I find myself talking a lot about the things that aren't happening in the industry and the issues that we're facing. But this is an exciting industry, and innovation is key, and it's the name of the game. And so I think if you're interested, if you love the plant, if you believe in it, if you want to advocate for it, if you just want to operate in it, whatever you want to do, get in. The water's warm, and it's only going to get warmer. And if you need help figuring out how to do that in as risk-free a way as is possible right now, reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you.
Morgan Davis, CEO of Davis Legal. Where can they find your website and social media if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, my website's morgandavislegal.com. You can find me on Instagram at Morgan Davis Legal. LinkedIn, same thing. Facebook, Davis Legal.
Morgan, thank you so much again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for the insights, and I look forward to doing it again real soon.
Truly my pleasure, Kevin. It was so nice to see you and spend some time with you.
Absolutely. Yes, I feel the same way. And thank you all for listening. Bye.